Welcome to the What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting podcast show. If you're a foster mom, on the journey to adoption, already adopted, or somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out how to navigate the foster care system, wanting to grow your family through adoption, trying to balance everything, or stuck in that space of all things unknown, you're in the right place. What if there was a way to fast track your knowledge, prepare you for the good and the hard, and somebody who could answer that long list of questions I know you have? Hi friend, I'm Christine Marie, biblical mindset coach, adoptive mom, and previous foster parent of 77 children. Yep, you heard that right, 77 kiddos. I'm your host, and my goal is to help make your journey a lot easier by sharing my best tools, techniques, and skills that helped me pivot from foster care to adoption, fully surrender, and trust the process. I'm about to bring some calm to the chaos and show you how to navigate through this journey with a whole lot of grace. So go grab your cup of coffee and let's jump in. Hello. I'm so excited. Christine Marie here, and I am here to bring you another episode of What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting. But this episode is a little bit special because we are kicking off season 2. And I was so excited to kick off season 2 today with a very special guest, Donna Kirkwood. And I cannot wait for her to share her testimony with you. Not only is she an author, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that at the end of our episode so you can hear where to find her information, but also she's a mom, a wife, an adoptive mom. Donna, welcome to the show. I'm so excited. Would you tell us a little bit more about you and your journey and what led you to adoption?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And I loved just getting to know you a little bit prior to this. And so just excited to be a part of what you're doing. As far as our story, I feel it's kind of common. You just kind of get this calling in your heart that you're supposed to do something more. And I got an opportunity to work in a school district for a few years. And in that time, this young man came into our classroom, and little did I know that he would be the one that God was preparing for our family and preparing our hearts for. I briefly shared with you when we got this call to adopt, I'd been working in the special ed department. And so I really thought it was supposed to be a little Down syndrome baby because they're just so much fun and stubborn and just keeps life exciting. And God had different plans for that. And so after I had quit my job in the school district, God just kept promoting that, hey, I want you to adopt. And so I remember going to my husband and after quiet time one morning with the Lord and just said, hey, we're supposed to adopt. And my husband was like, okay. And I said, but it needs to be a child with special needs. And he was like, okay. So our church at the time had a adoption ministry that they were just kind of launching, and they had brought in a heart gallery wall. For those that are unfamiliar with that, it's just a wall of children that might be in your county or in your state that are looking to be adopted and find their forever families. And so our son was actually the very last picture at the bottom of that heart gallery page. And I remember walking through there, and our son, he was a little difficult in the classroom, had a lot of behavior issues and baggage that he was carrying, as most would, coming through foster care. And I remember looking at my husband and go, oh, look, and we just walked out. Like, it still was not on my radar that he would be the one that God had for us. And I called my friend. She worked for CASA, Child Advocates. I told her, I was like, hey, one of my ex-students was on the Heart Gallery today. How cool was that? And next thing you know, I'm getting a call from her, and she said, you and Eddie have classes over the next month on Tuesdays and Thursdays and some Saturdays to foster. And I was like, what? And so we were like, well, okay. So our lives really just kind of did a 180 right then, and our whole schedule shifted. And so we started going to the classes. We came in and we kind of gave the people at the training picture, and we're like, this is the kid we want. And they were like, okay, but what if he's not available? And we're like, no, he'll be available. This is who God's calling us to. So that's kind of how we came about adopting our son. And within 6 months, he moved in August, and we finalized the adoption in January. It was kind of a whirlwind, to be honest.
So I love that. And what I love most about that is that it just is such a reminder that our lives are predestined. And God just provides every single detail. So tell me a little bit more about like once you started taking the classes, how did he end up getting placed in your home? Like share a little bit more of that.
Okay. So we started taking the classes, and then like when you do that, they give you this time frame where they'll come to your house for maybe a weekend to kind of see if they're a good fit, and they start giving you these binders. I mean, and they're thick. He had 4 of them that came with him.
Oh
He had been in
gosh.
foster care since he was 3. We got him when he was 9, so there was 6 years of just everything that foster families had to write in detail and just, really
Oh,
transcribe. And so I'm thankful that I had met him in my classroom because I knew how sweet of a child he was. Had I read everything that was in that binder and went just from what people had said, I'd have been like, "Yep, tapping out, we're done. We're not doing this." And
yeah.
so we got to go visit him at his foster family and take him out for the day. And then after that went well, we got to go get him and bring him to our house, and he stayed with us for a full weekend. And things were great. At the time, we had our daughter. She was 12, and we made this decision as a family.
Yeah.
And so it was great. We had a great time. One of my favorite memories of that was we had dinner one night, and if he couldn't and he didn't finish his meal, so my husband actually threw his meal away, and I guess his foster family would put it in the microwave because they knew he'd wanna come back to it later. So, he came to me and he was like, "Can I have dessert?" And I said, "Well, buddy, you didn't finish your dinner, so." And he was like, "Well, your husband threw it away."
Oh gosh.
Fair point. So it was just really funny because you see the different dynamics of how a child is brought up compared to what you're used to raising your own children.
Yeah.
You have a biological child. So he came that weekend. It was fantastic, and we decided to move forward with the adoption. And then probably about a week or so went by after all the licensing and all the interviews they wanna do with, family and friends and just to make sure you're the right fit. And then they didn't waste any time. They moved him in, and the first night in, my husband was so excited about getting his first boy, and he had gotten Texas Ranger tickets to take him out, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, we're going to the Ranger game tonight." I was like, "I ain't doing that." And my husband
Oh
was
god.
elated.
So, something I wanted to ask you about, and hopefully it's okay if we go there, but like we fostered a lot of very high needs, special needs kids and kiddos who probably would have been in your classroom. Very challenging behaviors, like very, very challenging. And they came usually on a lot of medication. For me, I always looked at that like, I don't know, some of them were needed, right? But then also a lot of them I felt like were kind of used to subdue the child so they were more manageable in the homes that they were in before. And I'm not casting any judgment, like it's just what I had found for our particular cases. Did you run into any sort of situation like that with him as well?
Oh my goodness. So, yeah, he came with a ton of medication, and nobody could tell me I mean, I feel like we had so many doctors involved.
Yeah.
Out here, we have a place called the Child Study Center, so a
Yep.
lot of children in foster care go there, and so every time I'd ask, I'm like, "Well, why is he on this medication?" And, "Well, because he's this." "Well, do we have any records that says that he's autistic? Do we have any like, where's the testing that we got here from?" And I know that his mom had a lot of biological issues, mental issues that she struggled with, and mental health problems that could have been passed down, but there was no evidence that they had done that with him. And so as we started looking at it, when he finally became ours, we made a decision to take him off all medication with doctor's help, obviously.
Right.
And when he was ready, when we felt that there was a need for a medication, we introduced that back into his, lifestyle. And so I felt that a lot of the medications that he was on was there to mask a symptom or a, side effect of another medication, and so it was just so he could be more manageable in a foster care situation,
Yeah.
and it just takes their personality away.
That's what we noticed too, and it was subduing a lot of the areas. It definitely helps keep them more manageable, which lowers their risk in the foster care system. I mean, if we just make it really black and white. But it's hard because I don't know how children are really meant to process and work through their emotions and truly heal or get to that point where they can even decide if they want to heal or not when they're on that many medications. And some of them, what we realized, can actually cause permanent symptoms in your body.
I agree with that. I think that they're already going through so much trauma,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they're put on this medication that kinda erases their feelings, and
Yeah.
so they're not taught to deal with those, and then when they're faced with some of the big challenges, they don't know how to do those, and if I'm being honest, I think that's with a lot of kids, not
Yeah.
just foster and adopted kids these days. I don't think that many children are taught how to deal with their emotions
Right.
anymore, but the medication definitely on our kids with that have been through the foster care system, it's just kinda like, "Hey, let's give them this so we can handle that, and they're not gonna be a problem." And then when faced with really big stuff, they just don't know how to process.
Yeah. So you took him off all the medication and then tell us, like, fast forward a little bit, tell us a little bit more because what I love about the story that you shared, I think there's so many moms out there who are going to identify with where you're at now.
So when we took him off his medication, he was good for a little bit, and he came to me and he was like, "Mom, I can't focus at school. Like I'm fuzzy." And we were like, "Okay, well then let's go get checked for ADHD, ADD." That was kind of one of his diagnoses before we took him off meds.
Yeah.
So we went in and they put him on ADHD medication, and he was on that from the time he was 10 to 17. There was no other medications. We still had some behavior issues, but we had learned to manage them, and
Right.
there wasn't any I wanna say that I've always been really hard on him, and I think that's because I saw him in a classroom setting, and if I'm being honest, for me, I don't know that I ever transitioned much to being mom, like, I felt like I always had to stay on him, and he was good with it, like, he learned. I mean, I do think that he is way further than he would have been had he still been in foster care.
Want to interject in that really quick is you said you were really hard on him and it's interesting because I feel like and so I think you and I talked about this. A lot of people would say like to me, "Oh my gosh, why are you so like strict with the girls and you're not as strict with the boys and like why do you treat them so different?" And we had gone to a lot of therapists, a lot of specialists, and they had actually recommended even for one of our daughters that she actually go to like a military boarding school and what they had shared was that sometimes kids with this much trauma, like, they actually need so much structure and routine almost as if, like, in a classroom. So,
Mhm.
I would imagine that he probably thrived in that environment because I know for our kids, like, you take the bumper it's almost like a bumper guard for them, like, if you're bowling, right? Like, it
Yeah.
just helps them know what to expect because especially with such a young childhood of so much unpredictability and attachment issues, I feel like it just helps them not stay in that fight or flight place. So anyways, just wanted to add that in there because I feel like the strictness is and being you say hard on him, I would imagine it's probably just like a strict and routine in black and white. I mean, that was actually so good for our girls.
It really was, like, with our biological daughter, I didn't have to tell her, "Hey, in 10 minutes, we're leaving, and we're gonna
Right?
go do this." With him, he needed that, um,
100%.
and he needed to know, "What are we doing? Like, when we leave the house today, what's the plan?" So he
Yeah.
could check that off in his brain, and so it was just a different way of raising him, I guess,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
structure he definitely needed, and he still thrives with structure till this day, and he's 29. No, just kidding, that's my daughter, she's 29, he's
Mm.
26.
Yeah.
But so then, we go through until 17, and he's doing great, and then at 17, it was just something we could see something was brewing, but we weren't quite sure. He was becoming more defiant with me, and which we just thought maybe we were just hitting another testing season, which they'll tell you, in foster
Yeah.
care, you get that in
Yeah.
adoption. And so that's kinda what we were thinking. Maybe he was just testing his new boundaries at almost becoming an adult. We did find that he was struggling with what does adulting look like?
Mm.
Because, he doesn't like to read, he doesn't like to sit behind a desk, he doesn't like to do any kind of schoolwork, and what he realized adulting was what he saw his father doing behind a desk. And
Mhm.
so he correlated that with adulthood, and I think there was a fear in him too that was shifting, and so there was a
Yeah.
lot going on that he was processing, but there was one particular day that I was coming home from work, it was a regular day, I was coming home to get him, we were gonna go to horse therapy at 17, and I get this call from him, and it's, "I don't know who I am, I don't know where I am, I don't know what I wanna do, I don't know if I wanna go to horses, if I don't wanna go to horses, I don't," and it was just this honestly, I didn't answer my phone, it was a message I ended up getting, and so I called him back immediately, and he was just really scared. And so I called my husband and I was like, "Something's not right. I need you to meet me at the house." And so my husband came home, and when I got there, I found our son in fetal position in his bedroom on the floor, just crying. And he was saying that the voices just kept talking to him. And I was like, "What in the world is happening?" We hadn't had any of this, the medications that he had been on, there were some for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and all these things that but we hadn't seen it from the time he
Yeah.
was and so now, I will go back and say when he had came in to live with us, he would have moments where he's walking around his room talking to people, and he would tell us that his friends were being mean to him and things, and we were like, "Okay, well, most kids have imaginary friends, and so that's
Right.
not normal," and we would just tell him that his friends couldn't come over if they were gonna be mean to him, and he was okay with that, and we never heard about it anymore, so we just thought it was kid stuff. Uh
Yeah.
so when we fast forward to 17 and we hit this season, we were like, what's happening?" So we took him to the hospital that night, and that led into about 6 weeks of in and outpatient care, just trying to figure out what was going on. And they
Yeah.
got him on some medication, and then we were able to do some testing and later found out that it's a disorder called schizoaffective bipolar type. And so then we just kind of started on that treatment plan and trying to just maintain his life with medication and keep him living as much of a normal life as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does that look like now for him? You said he's 26, right? So
Mhm.
what does that look like now? Because I know, our oldest is 18, gonna be 19 soon, and she said, "I'm gonna live here for at least 6 more years." So, um, I feel like, especially like, it's so different than, a child who didn't struggle with attachment
Yeah.
in their earlier years. Like, what does that look like now?
So I'm gonna be really just transparent, and
Yeah.
some not agree with this and some may, and I hope some resonate with it and realize that it's normal. It was a really hard decision, but there were some really scary seasons
Yeah.
within that mental illness and
Yeah.
fear for our safety going forward. Not that and I do wanna say that he would never, ever hurt anybody when
Yeah.
he is in his right mind.
Right.
When
Right.
he is not, he's even told us, "I don't remember doing that."
Mm.
And so when that switch flips, he's not in control of himself. And
Right.
s it was one of those we did send him away at one point to a boarding type school that was supposed to
Yeah.
teach him how life skills, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, that was a season where COVID hit, and so
Mm.
what he was supposed to learn there, that place was also transitioning and trying to modify and do the best that they could with the students and kids that they had in their care, and so he didn't get what he needed in that season,
Right.
but what we did find is that he had the ability to live on his own.
Yeah.
And so he had gotten a job at Tom Thumb at the time, and I don't know who all's listening, but that's a grocery store. And
Mhm.
and he was doing well there. And then we decided to, like for what we were spending for this boarding school, we thought, what would it look like if we got him his own place? And
Mhm.
so we said, let's bring him back over here. Let's get him his own place. We'll subsidize it as much we can until he can get a job. And so we
Yeah.
got him over here and he got a job at Walmart. And he pushes carts for a living, and he does have some other things that he's never gonna be able to drive really, so he has an electric bike, and he rides back and forth to work on his bike, and he gets up on his own, and he takes his own medications, and we help him budget, and my husband allocates and pays the bills. He doesn't have the ability to really do that, and
Mhm.
honestly, if we gave him access to his checking account, he'd probably give it to everybody and eat his dinner out of a vending machine, so we've kind of have some reins on it, but give him
Mhm.
pretty much free will to kinda do what he wants, and every once in a while, he doesn't wanna take his meds, and he gets frustrated that he has to and frustrated with the life that he has, and why and he questions God. Why would God, do this or that? And we just tell him, and this is where we put boundaries in place, and it's been hard, but we let him know, "Buddy, like, if you take your medication, we are here for you. We are here to support you and you're part of this family, but if you choose not to take your medication, then we're stepping away because it affects everybody in your path." And
Yeah.
and that's hard, and a lot of people don't get that, but mental health is scary, and I've never been in the situation that he's in. I'm not in his brain, but there is safety factors in place that you have to
Yeah.
kind of be okay with setting up that boundary.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being so vulnerable because I feel like this is the other side of foster care and adoption that people don't really talk about is what does it look like when you adopt your child and mental health in the child causes you to make some really hard decisions, especially boundaries. I mean, it's hard because not only do you need to show and model for him what healthy boundaries are and what he needs to do in order to be in a healthy situation. I feel like that's so important and you're modeling that for him through the boundaries that you've set to keep him safe and your family safe.
Well, and if we're being honest, we need boundaries in every relationship. We need them in our own
Right.
marriages. We
Agreed.
need them, uh, and my husband and I work a lot with married couples, and I've got spouses that have spouses with mental health issues.
Right.
And I tell them the same thing. Like, there are certain boundaries you're going to have to put up. It doesn't mean you're giving up on that individual. It means that
Right.
you're putting in boundaries in place to protect yourself and
Right.
to protect your mental state as well. And
Right.
see, I don't think that boundaries are bad. It's how we view them and how we approach them.
It was interesting because I have been raised in the church my whole life, and a lot of what I was kind of shared and taught was that boundaries aren't biblical, which I know seems crazy now to like, of course it is. Jesus flipped tables for people, right? And just showed this righteous anger, right? But there's a difference between, it was like he would encounter people in the Bible and the stories will tell you, right? He encountered people who were living in sin and he would share the gospel with them and share the truth and then he would continue going. Like that is such a beautiful example of what boundaries are. And but the people that he kept in his inner circle, the people that he surrounded himself with, which, can be our adoptive children, our bio children, our family, whoever it is that are your direct people in your circle, right? I mean, he had a very high expectation of who they were and what they did. And I mean, I think he even said, "Get behind me, Satan," right? To one of them when like, "Get your mind right."
So, one thing too is that it's important to realize that there's a difference between boundaries and walls.
Agreed.
And so, right, we can put a wall up and walls aren't as easily moved. Boundaries can be adjusted as needed. And so I think that if we put a boundary in place and somebody steps over that boundary, then we need to adjust it. If they stay within that boundary and they're respecting it, then we can adjust it. And so it doesn't mean that we're shutting somebody off. It just means we're just protecting.
I think it's so good and it's maintaining, especially, and I think as adoptive parents, our mental health is so important. And when we find those boundaries that are healthy for us, and I think, and this is one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation with you, is because it's such a common story for adoption and foster, but I think even biological kids, right? Our kids have mental health struggles, and we can either shift into the codependent parent, right? And we can try and rescue them and save them and do all these things that are going to actually not help them become who they're meant to be. Or we can place healthy boundaries in a situation and communicate them. I think communication, like you've talked about, you've shared with your son, like you've communicated with him what these healthy boundaries are. And then if he crosses them, then you adjust the boundaries even more. And so I think that that's so important, especially not only for your mental health, but for your daughter, for your husband, and for your son.
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of times people do, and I was very fortunate, we were very fortunate that our adoption agency kept telling us, like, you don't adopt for the perfect family because it's
Right.
not going to happen. And so realizing if you're adopting to create that perfect, family and that perfect Facebook photo, that's not the reason to do it. Every child deserves a home regardless of their background. Every child deserves a home.
Yeah.
And regardless of where they're at and what they've been through, they're still God's children, and we are
Right.
called to take care of those children. Our church actually has a whole ministry just defending orphans and
Love
widows,
that.
and that's what we're called to do. And so It's not going to be perfect. And like you said, our biological children aren't going to be perfect. And we're going to have to set up boundaries with them at times as well if they're overstepping, especially after they're old enough to get out of the house. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so I think that a lot of times it's easy for us to look at our adoptive children and be like, man, what did we do? Right? But your biological children can be born into your family too. And why don't you ask that same question? Because
Yes.
it is what it is. Each person is created uniquely by God, and He knows before they're even born here what their life is going to be like. We all know that as Christ followers.
I have one question I want to ask you because you just brought it up and I was like, I want to ask you because I feel like maybe there's other moms listening to this who are in this same boat. So did you ever feel like you did something wrong with him and this is why this happened? Or you
Yeah.
carried like the shame of it?
Yes. There. Yes and no. I guess if that's an answer.
Yeah.
Uh, he came into our home, and it's like I wondered, are we the right family for him? We're not equipped for any of this. Like I have
Yeah.
no idea about this kind of background. I can defiance is one thing, but having to restrain a child is a completely different thing. And
Right.
so, yeah, there were times that I was like, are we the right family for him? Did we do the right thing? Are we the best option for him? And
Yes.
I want to tell families out there that yes, you are. You said yes. And that's all that God needs for his plan to take effect is your yes.
Thank you for being open about that because I feel like, and I know I shared with you, like we did the very best with our adoptive daughter, and she still chose to break every rule and move out and move into a homeless shelter. And she's living her best life right now. And we don't have communication with her. But I think that's the piece. Like for me, I know that I know that I know that I did every single thing, and my husband did every single thing we could have done to help her shift her heart and in mind into healing, and she just didn't choose it. She just
Yeah.
didn't choose it right now. And I'm not saying she won't, but that's why I'm saying, like, for me, though, a lot of times, a lot of those years as I was working through my own healing before she moved out, right? I was like, did I do something wrong? Is she like this because I carried that burden. And I feel like whether you're adopted, foster, or not, I think as moms, we take these things to heart. Like, I ruined them.
I do that with my biological daughter. Like, what did
Yes.
in seasons of her life, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And we just have to realize that we can't we can't determine their steps. God's already done that.
Yes.
And we just have to train a child in the way they should go and be the best parent that God has given us and equipped us to be. And we're going to screw up and we're going to make mistakes and we're not going to be perfect. And he
Yeah.
never asked us to.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so thankful that you've been willing, and I feel like we could talk forever and we could just deep dive into all this. But can you share with our audience a little bit more about your book? Because I'm so excited about this for you.
So I recently became an author last year, something God had placed on my heart for several years. And last year, it's about how our lives correlate with that of a vineyard and the seasons of cultivation and growth and planting and then the seasons in the vineyard of pruning and then kind of a tasting room. My husband and I had a opportunity to own a winery for about 5 years, and so I got to kind of see some of that as well. And I really look at a tasting room as our testimonies and the stories that are shared within the pruning and the fermentation and trials of life. And so my book it's called He is the Vine from the Vineyard to the Tasting Room. And it just kind of shares our stories and how God implements everything. And He is the true gardener and the true vine and staying connected to Him is our source. And so that is available at my website, donnakirkwood.com, along with a companion study guide that I created to go along with it.
I'm so excited. And don't worry, we will include all the information in the show notes so you can go grab that. And that's what I love most is I love your story of redemption because you truly all God needed was your yes. And when
Absolutely.
you gave him your yes, all the pieces were already put together.
And they're not always what we expect it to look like.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's kind of like a mosaic, uh,
Yes.
and it's always beautiful if we allow him to be the source.
Well, and I think that's true, like, especially in our family, what we're seeing now is like it's been heartbreaking to have my daughter move out, but yet if you look at, there's always beauty in the ashes, right? And like putting something broken together, like the amount of quality time we're spending with our youngest daughter, we would have never had that because of what was going on with her sister here. That always took the forefront of all the attention for years. And so it's like, wow, I'm just so grateful. And I'm also so grateful that God's going to meet her wherever she's at. We are intentionally allowing her to hit rock bottom, whatever that is for her, because we want her to meet Jesus. And that's what we all know, that's where you meet Jesus, is at the end of yourself. It's not easy as a parent. But I love your testimony that you tried all these different resources. Like I think we all do, right? We just want our children to thrive. And you found another solution because you did test out sending him to a boarding school or the location you sent him to. You were able to then have the time and the space to think, well, what can we do for him?
Yeah. And he is capable of so much more than I would have probably ever been able to see on my own if I was still sitting in it. And
Yeah,
sometimes it does take stepping away from it in order to allow God to show you what's next. And
I love
so
that.
that's what he did. And so I'm so proud of you for allowing her to kind of seek what she thinks she wants, because it is hard, but also I'm so grateful that God is showing you the little God winks,
Yeah,
allowing you to have that time with your other daughter that you
yeah.
probably wouldn't have realized you were truly missing in the midst of the chaos.
100%. And I think that's the piece is that, we went through this period, and I'm sure you felt this with your son, like, Lord, like I can't handle anything else.
Yeah.
And people will tell me, I think somebody told me one time, they said, well, there's a Bible verse that says that God won't give you more than you can handle. And I said, that's not the verse.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I wish
Yeah.
that was the verse, but that's not the verse because he wants us to cling to him so that he can take us through it.
Yes.
And that's where the redemption piece is. And I hope that, and I'm certain people are going to be so encouraged by your story today. And I just appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing your testimony, talking about what it's like to truly set boundaries and and look at the fruit. Look for the fruit, especially going back to your book, right? Look for the fruit.
Yes, absolutely. The fruit is always better when it stays connected to the vine.
Amen. Well, thank you for being on today's episode. And if you would like to connect with Donna personally, she's going to have her website on there. Feel free to reach out to her, connect. That's what we are all here for, is the kingdom of God, to help build each other up and pour into each other and be a light in this world. And until next time. Hey friend, I hope that you loved today's episode. I pray it blessed you and helped you see that you have a friend in your corner who truly understands what you're walking through. If so, would you share this episode with someone who's been praying for a breakthrough in their own journey? It would also bless me big time and help others to find this podcast if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also submit your questions, topics that you would like covered, and find a community of like-minded mamas in my private Facebook group by searching What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting on Facebook. See you next time.